tell you about a day that comes in the life of every person who ever really changed the direction of their existence. And I want to tell you about it carefully, because most people miss this day when it arrives, and some people never recognize it even years after it has passed. There is a day, often ordinary on the outside, often completely unremarkable to anyone watching, when your future stops being an idea and starts being something else entirely. It stops being a story you tell yourself at night before you fall asleep, and it becomes a real thing with weight and shape and gravity. A thing that lives inside of you and begins to shape every hour that follows. That day is not found on a calendar. It cannot be scheduled or purchased or arranged, but it can be invited. Now, most people are waiting for a dramatic experience. They are waiting for lightning to strike, for a voice to speak out of a cloud, for a sudden burst of certainty that sweeps them off their feet and carries them into a new life. And because they are waiting for something dramatic, they miss what actually happens, which is usually very quiet. The moment something breaks open in a human being is often so soft that it could be mistaken for nothing at all. It might happen while you're washing dishes. It might happen on a drive home from work. It might happen in the middle of a conversation that did not seem important, or while you are reading a sentence in a book that thousands of people have read without anything happening to them. The moment is not loud. The moment is exact. Here is what actually takes place inside of you on that day, and I want you to picture this because I think it will help you recognize it when it comes. Somewhere beneath the surface of your ordinary awareness, a shift occurs. And suddenly, the future you have been talking about for years is no longer out there somewhere. It is in here. It is in your chest. It is in your hands. It is in the way you are holding your coffee cup or standing in line at the store. You can feel it as clearly as you can feel your own heartbeat. And what was once a hope becomes something closer to a knowing. What was once a maybe becomes something closer to a must. I have watched this happen in people over and over again, and I've noticed something very interesting about what comes right before it. It almost always comes after a period of something that looks like despair. It is not quite despair. It is more like exhaustion with your own excuses. It is more like the final breath before something gives way. You see, most people cannot change while they are still entertained by their own stories about why they cannot change. The stories have to get boring first. The excuses have to lose their flavor. You have to hear yourself say the same thing you have been saying for 10 years. And on this particular day, for whatever reason, the words taste different in your mouth. They taste like a lie you are tired of telling. And that is the opening. That is the crack in the wall. That is the narrow doorway through which a new life can walk in. It is small, and it does not stay open forever. And this is why I want you to be paying attention. When you notice yourself getting tired of your own familiar complaints, do not talk yourself out of that tiredness. That tiredness is sacred. That tiredness is the sound of something ending so that something else can begin. Most people, when they feel that tiredness, run straight back to entertainment, to distraction, to food, to noise, to anything that will cover up the silence long enough for the moment to pass. Do not do that. Sit in the silence. The silence is where the door is. Now, when the moment actually arrives and you feel that subtle shift where the future becomes real, I want you to do something specific. I want you to stop whatever you are doing, and I want you to acknowledge it. Say it out loud if you can. Say, this is the day. Say, something just changed in me. Say, I am not the same person I was 5 minutes ago. This may sound silly, but language has a way of anchoring an experience, that would otherwise drift away. The moment you put words around what just happened to you, you make it harder for your old self to pretend it never occurred. You make a witness of yourself. You become accountable to the version of you that just woke up. And from that day forward, everything is different. Even though on the outside, nothing may have changed yet. Your bank account is the same. Your circumstances are the same. Your relationships are the same. But inside, there's now a direction, and a direction changes everything. A person without a real future will drift, and drift wherever the current takes them. A person with a real future will move, and move with a purpose that the wind cannot knock off course. The day your future stops being an idea is the day you stop being driftwood and start being a ship. And I promise you, the journey of a ship is a very different journey than the journey of driftwood, even if they are floating on the same water. Let me draw a line for you now, because I believe the failure to see this line is one of the biggest sources of quiet frustration in human life. On one side of the line is wishing. On the other side of the line is deciding. And almost everyone I've ever met at some point in their life confused the two, which is why they spent years wondering why their wishes never came true, not realizing that a wish has never once in the history of the world built anything, fixed anything, or delivered anything to anyone. Wishes do not build houses. Wishes do not write books. Wishes do not change lives. Decisions do. Here is what a wish actually is, if you look at it honestly. A wish is a pleasant feeling you have about something you would like to be different, combined with no commitment whatsoever to making it different. A wish lives in the imagination and stays there. It costs nothing. It risks nothing. It demands nothing. And because it demands nothing, it also produces nothing. A wish is a form of entertainment that we have agreed to take seriously, even though deep down we know it is not serious. We wish we were in better shape. We wish we had more money. We wish our relationships were deeper. We wish we were further along. And the wishing itself creates a kind of emotional circulation that almost feels like progress, even though nothing is moving. A decision is a completely different species of thing, and I want you to understand this in your bones. A decision is a closing of doors. The very word itself, if you look at its roots, means to cut off. When you decide, you are cutting away every other possibility except the one you have chosen. You are saying, this way and not that way. This life and not that life. This path and not that path. And the moment you do that, something happens that cannot happen while you are still wishing. Your energy, which had been scattered across 100 different possible futures, suddenly collects itself into one direction. Power follows focus. Always has. Always will. Now here's the reason most people never cross the line from wishing to deciding. A real decision requires that you give up the comfort of keeping all your options open. It requires that you say no to 1,000 good things in order to say yes to one true thing. And most people do not want to do that. They want to keep the possibilities alive in their imagination. Because as long as the possibility is alive, they do not have to face the fact that they are not pursuing it. You can spend a whole lifetime saying, well, I could still become a writer. I could still start that business. I could still get my health back. And because you are still holding the possibility, you feel like you still have it. But you do not have it. You have an idea of it. And an idea of a thing and a thing itself are separated by the distance of a decision. You want to know what happens the moment you actually make a real decision about your future? The internal landscape of your life reorganizes itself almost immediately. And it is one of the most remarkable things a human being can experience. Before the decision, everything is blurry. You have priorities, but they shift depending on your mood. You have values, but you negotiate with them constantly. You have goals, but they compete with each other and leave you confused about what to do with your Tuesday afternoon. After a real decision, the blur begins to clear. Suddenly you know what matters and what does not. Suddenly the Tuesday afternoon is no longer confusing because the decision tells you how to use it. Suddenly the 100 voices in your head begin to fall silent because the one voice of the decision has become louder than all of them. But I want to warn you about something, because this is where a lot of sincere people get tripped up. There is a counterfeit version of decision-making that most people practice, and it feels like a decision, but it is not one. It is announcing. You announce that you are going to change. You tell your spouse, you tell your friends, you write it in a journal, and you mistake the announcement for the decision. Then, weeks later, when nothing has actually changed, you feel confused because you remember announcing it, and you are not sure why the announcement did not produce the result. Here is why. An announcement is a wish with better marketing. A decision is something that reaches all the way down into the structure of how you spend your time, how you spend your money, who you spend your days with, and what you are willing to tolerate in your own behavior. A decision shows up in your calendar. It shows up in your bank statement. It shows up in the way you answer the phone. An announcement shows up only in your words. So here's what I want you to ask yourself, and I want you to sit with the question for more than just a moment, because the quality of your answer will shape the quality of your next decade. What have I been wishing for that I've never actually decided on? Make a list if you have to. Do not rush through it. Look at each item and ask, have I really decided this, or have I only been wishing it? And when you find the ones where you have only been wishing, I want you to do something brave. I want you to either decide it for real, with everything that a real decision requires, or release it and stop telling yourself you want it. Because the middle ground, the land of the permanent wish, is the most exhausting place a human being can live. You carry the weight of wanting the thing without ever getting the joy of having it. And that is no way to spend the one life you have been given. Now I want to be clear on something. There is a difference between pushing yourself towards something and being pulled by something. And the difference is enormous. And the difference determines whether your pursuit of a better life will leave you exhausted or will leave you more alive than you have ever been. Most people spend their whole lives pushing. Only a few ever learn to be pulled. And I want to explain to you what that actually means and how it actually works. When you are pushing yourself toward a goal, here is what that feels like. Every morning is a battle. You have to manufacture motivation out of thin air. You have to argue with yourself to do the thing you said you wanted to do. You rely on tricks and tactics and techniques to keep yourself moving. You feel proud of yourself when you manage to stay on track for a week, and you feel defeated when you fall off for a day. The whole thing has a quality of forcing about it, a quality of grinding your gears against the natural inclinations of your own mind. And while you can do this for a little while, you cannot do it forever, because no human being has an infinite supply of force. Eventually the force runs out, and you collapse back into whatever you were before. And you call yourself undisciplined, when really you were just running an engine that was never designed to run that way. When you are being pulled by a future, something completely different is happening. You are not pushing anymore. The future itself is exerting a gravitational pull on your present, and that pull is doing most of the work. You find yourself making the better choice, not because you are fighting for it, but because the better choice is simply more aligned with where you are going. You find yourself going to bed at a reasonable hour, not because you are forcing yourself, but because the version of you tomorrow has things to do that you are excited about. You find yourself eating differently, speaking differently, spending your money differently, choosing your company differently. And none of it feels like discipline. It feels like magnetism. It feels like you are being drawn rather than driven. But this kind of pull does not happen by accident. And it does not happen until the future has become real enough, specific enough, and personal enough to actually generate a field of attraction. A vague future does not pull on anything. A future described only in general terms. A future made of phrases like be successful, or be happy, or be healthy, has no magnetic force. Those phrases are too weak, too abstract, too shapeless to move a human life. The future that pulls is the future you can taste. It is the future with particular rooms in it, particular mornings in it, particular feelings in it. It is the future where you can describe what your Tuesday at 2 in the afternoon looks like 3 years from now. That future has mass, and mass generates gravity, and gravity pulls. This is why I encourage people not to rush past the work of imagining their future in rich and vivid detail. People want to get straight to the doing, but the doing will be weak until the vision is strong enough to generate the pull. Spend time picturing the house you want to live in, not as a picture on a magazine page, but as a place you can walk through in your mind, feeling the floor under your feet, smelling the kitchen, hearing the sounds outside the window. Spend time picturing the relationships you want to have, not as abstractions, but as specific conversations happening at specific dinner tables on specific evenings. The more real the future becomes in your inner experience, the more real it will begin to feel in your outer experience. The more the choices of your day will line up with its pull, almost without you having to think about it. And here's something remarkable about the pulled life. It renews your energy instead of draining it. When you are pushing yourself, every step forward costs you something. You feel tired at the end of the day, and not the good kind of tired either, but the depleted kind of tired, the kind that does not get fixed by sleep. When you are being pulled by a future you believe in, every step forward actually gives you something back. You feel more alive at the end of the day than you did at the beginning. The work itself replenishes you because the work is no longer separate from who you are becoming. The work is the becoming, and the becoming is inherently energizing in a way that mere performance never is. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because I never want to sell you on a philosophy that is not true in every season. The pulled life still has hard days. It still has moments of fatigue, moments of doubt, moments where you question whether the future you are moving toward is the right one. But even in those moments, the pulled life has a resource that the pushed life does not have. It has a reason that lives inside of you, not outside of you. The pushed life runs on external motivation, which evaporates when conditions change. The pulled life runs on internal vision, which is renewable because it is generated by you, not given to you. You can lose almost everything in the external world and still have the vision intact inside of you. And as long as the vision is intact, the pull continues, and the pull is what carries you through the seasons when nothing else would. So my challenge to you is this: stop trying so hard to push yourself into a better life and start investing in a vision strong enough to pull you there. Give your future the specificity and the personal weight it needs to start having gravitational effects on your present. Feed the vision daily, not with empty affirmations, but with real, felt imagination of the life you are moving toward. And then watch what happens. Watch how the small choices start making themselves. Watch how the hard things get easier. Watch how you stop having to convince yourself to do what you said you would do, because you're no longer trying to drag a reluctant old self toward a distant new life. You're simply walking, one natural step at a time, into a future that has been waiting for you and calling you and pulling you home. And here's what most motivational speakers will leave out, because this part is not as pleasant as the rest. And yet, without understanding this part, you will not be able to cross the threshold we have been talking about. Every real future has a price. Every transformation has a transaction. And the willingness to pay that price is ultimately what separates the people who live their future from the people who only ever imagine it. Now, that kind of truth might not sell a seminar, because I want you to hear it before you choose what to do with the rest of your days. Because here's what most people want, if you listen carefully to what they actually say. They want the transformation without the transaction. They want to arrive at a better life without leaving the old one behind. They want new results while keeping all of their old habits, all of their old relationships, all of their old excuses, all of their old comforts. And I do not blame them for wanting this, because it is a very human wish, but it is not a possible wish. The universe does not offer that exchange. You cannot have a different life and keep the same life at the same time. You have to let something go, and what you have to let go of is often more than you thought, and often things you were not prepared to give up. Let me tell you what I have watched people have to surrender over the years, when their future finally stopped being an idea. Some of them had to surrender comfortable excuses they had used for decades. Excuses that had become so familiar, they felt like family members. Imagine telling yourself for 20 years that the reason you have not succeeded is because of your upbringing, or because of an old injury, or because of how people treated you. And then one day, realizing that if you are going to step into the life you want, that story has to be put down. That is not a small thing to put down. That story has been keeping you company for a long time. And yet, if you want the new life, the story has to go. You cannot take it with you. Others I have known had to surrender certain relationships. And this is one of the hardest prices of all to pay. Not because the people were bad people, but because the relationships were built around a version of you that is dying. And the relationship cannot survive your becoming, because it was built on your staying the same. You may find that some of the people you have laughed with, cried with, grown up with, cannot come with you into the next chapter of your life. They want the old version of you back. They miss the old version of you. And every time you are around them, the old version of you is the only version they will have access to, because that is the only version they know how to love. This is a painful price, and I will not pretend it is easy, but it is sometimes necessary, because you cannot expand around people who can only relate to your smallness. Some people have to surrender an identity they have held for a long time, and this one is subtle, but it is profound. You may have been the sick one in your family, the struggling one, the one who never quite got it together, the one everyone worried about. That role has probably shaped how you see yourself and how others see you for years and years. When you start to become something different, you are not just changing your circumstances. You are removing yourself from a cast of characters in a story everyone has been telling for a long time. And there will be resistance, sometimes from others, but mostly from inside of yourself. Because an identity that is deeply worn is not easily set down. The question is whether you are willing to stop being who you have always been, even though who you have always been has given you a certain kind of belonging so that you can become who you actually are. That's a real question, and it deserves a real answer, not a motivational slogan. And maybe the steepest price of all is the surrender of indefinite postponement. This is the price that almost no one wants to pay, because indefinite postponement is one of the great luxuries of the undecided life. As long as you have not started, you have not failed. As long as you have not tried, you cannot be disappointed. As long as the future is still an idea, you still have the comfort of imagining infinite versions of it without being pinned to any one of them. The moment you make your future real, you lose that luxury. You commit to a direction, and in doing so, you give up every other direction you might have gone. This is a real loss. I do not want to pretend it is not. Even a wonderful decision closes doors that will never open again in this life. And there is a grief in that, even when the decision is right. But here is what you gain, and this is what I want you to weigh against the price. You gain your actual life. You gain the one version of you that was always waiting underneath all the possibilities you were entertaining. You gain the weight and dignity of a person who has made a commitment and kept it. You gain the quiet self-respect of someone who no longer has to perform their values because they have quietly lived them. And these gains cannot be understood by someone who has never paid the price. They can only be understood from the other side of the transaction, which is why so many people, looking only at the cost and not at what is purchased with the cost, decide it is not worth it and go back to the land of the permanent wish. That is their right. But it is not, I would suggest, their best use of a short life. So before you leave here today, I want you to ask yourself one clarifying question. What am I unwilling to give up? And am I willing to lose the future I say I want in order to keep it? That is the real calculation. You are not choosing between paying the price and keeping everything. You are choosing between paying the price and paying a different price. A quieter one, a sadder one, a price that gets charged a little bit at a time over the course of the rest of your life in the form of a knowing you could not silence. Everyone pays. The only question is what they are paying for. Make sure you are paying for the life you actually want, and not just for the comfort of avoiding the discomfort of going after it. So here's the key. Once your future stops being an idea, it becomes something you do not chase anymore. You live it. You live it today, right now, in the ordinary hours of this very day. Not waiting for some distant moment when you have finally arrived, because the arrival is not a destination, and it never was. The arrival is a manner of walking, and the walk starts now, or it does not start at all. This is the secret that most people miss, and I want to unfold it for you carefully, because it will change not only where you are going, but how you're spending every hour between here and there. Most people treat the future like a place they're going to visit someday, as if they will get off the train at the station and only then begin to act like the person they want to be. They say to themselves, once I have the money, I will feel generous. Once I have the success, I will feel confident. Once I have the relationship, I will feel lovable. Once I have the body, I will feel at home in myself. And they wait, sometimes for decades, for the circumstances to arrive before they allow themselves to embody the traits. But this is exactly backwards. The traits come first. The circumstances follow. The generous person attracts abundance, not the other way around. The confident person earns success, not the other way around. The self-possessed person draws love, not the other way around. You do not wait for the future to arrive to start being the person who lives in it. You become that person now with what you have, where you are, and the arrival takes care of itself. Think about it this way. The future self you are becoming is not a stranger waiting for you somewhere down the road. The future self is already inside you, quietly, like a seed in winter soil, waiting for the conditions that will allow it to come forward. Your job is not to go find that self somewhere else. Your job is to create the conditions, right here in your current life, that allow that self to emerge. And the conditions are not complicated. They are simply the small behaviors, postures, and presences of the person you are becoming. Practice today in your actual life, even when they feel slightly unfamiliar. Every time you practice them, the seed moves a little closer to the surface. Every time you neglect them, it sinks a little deeper into the soil. What does this look like in practice, in the texture of an ordinary day? It looks like carrying yourself right now the way your future self would carry themselves. It looks like speaking right now the way your future self would speak. It looks like treating your body, your work, your relationships, your thoughts, the way your future self would treat them. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just directionally. You do not have to do everything the future self would do. You just have to point yourself that way in the small moments and let the alignment build slowly, the way a stream cuts a canyon over time. The stream is not violent. The stream is persistent, and persistence in the direction of your future is what turns the future from an idea into a lived reality. There is something beautiful that begins to happen once you start living this way. The distance between who you are and who you are becoming starts to collapse. The gap closes. You stop feeling like two people, the one you are and the one you want to be. You start to feel like one person, moving in one direction, expressing one truth in 1,000 small daily ways. The internal conflict quiets down. The inner debate loses its intensity. You have stopped being divided against yourself because the person you are today is already an early version of the person you are becoming. And they are on the same team, working on the same project, which is the unfolding of your actual life. And people will notice this before you do. Your presence will change before your circumstances change, and people around you will feel it. They will not be able to name it, but they will treat you differently. Opportunities will begin to come toward you, not because you have announced your new future, but because you have started to carry yourself as a person who belongs in that future. Doors will open that were closed before. Conversations will begin that would not have begun before. And you will look back months or years later, and you will see that the outer circumstances started shifting shortly after your inner bearing shifted, even though you did not know at the time that the one was summoning the other. The day your future stopped being an idea is the day that matters. But the days that come after that day are the days that determine whether the shift takes root or fades away. It is not enough to have the moment of clarity. You have to let the moment of clarity redesign how you walk through every ordinary hour that follows. The moment is the seed. The days are the soil. The daily embodiment is the water and the light. And over time, something grows that was not growing before. Something that could not have grown in the life you were living before the moment came. That is the harvest of the shift. That is what the day was really for. Your future is no longer out there somewhere, waiting for you to reach it. Your future is here now, in this room, in this hour, in the bearing of your shoulders, in the quality of your attention, in the way you speak to the next person you meet. Stop treating it like a place to arrive at, and start treating it like a way of being to inhabit, starting with your next breath. Because when your future stops being an idea and starts being a presence in your present, Something has happened in you that cannot be undone, and something has begun in your life that was never going to begin any other way. You have stopped waiting for your life to begin. You have begun your life, and that, more than anything else, is the gift of the day we have been talking about. The only bridge across that canyon is discipline. Not motivation, discipline. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings come and go like the weather. You can't build a life on feelings. You can't build a career on the days when you feel like working. You've got to build it on the days when you'd rather stay in bed, when you'd rather watch TV, when you'd rather do anything in the world besides the hard, unglamorous, necessary work of becoming who you're capable of becoming. Here's how this plays out in real life. Take two people starting a business at the same time. One of them is brilliant, creative, quick thinking, full of ideas that would make your head spin. The other one is solid, not flashy, not the smartest person in the room, but reliable, steady, and fiercely disciplined about the basics. Who do you think is still in business 5 years from now? I'll tell you who. It's the steady one, because the brilliant one got bored. The brilliant one got distracted by the next big idea before the first one had time to take root. The brilliant one couldn't be bothered with bookkeeping and customer follow-up and the 1,000 little details that keep a business alive because those things weren't exciting enough for someone of their ability. Meanwhile, the steady one kept the books, returned every phone call, followed up with every customer, and built a reputation one honest transaction at a time. Talent started the engine, but character kept fuel in the tank. And an engine without fuel, no matter how powerful it is, isn't going anywhere. Now I want to be really clear about something. I am not against talent. I am not telling you to ignore your gifts or pretend they don't matter. What I am telling you is that talent is a starting point, not a destination. Talent is the seed, not the harvest. And between the seed and the harvest, there is a tremendous amount of work that has nothing to do with talent and everything to do with character. There's the work of watering the seed. There's the work of pulling the weeds. There's the work of protecting the soil. There's the work of being patient when nothing seems to be growing, when the ground looks bare, and you start to wonder if anything is even happening. That is the work that talent alone will never do. That is the work that requires something deeper, something stronger, something that doesn't depend on how gifted you are, but on how committed you are. Here's another way to look at it. Talent determines what you can do. Character determines what you will do. And in the long run, What you will do matters infinitely more than what you can do. The world is full of people who can do remarkable things. The world is not full of people who will do the unremarkable things that make remarkable outcomes possible. Anybody can dream big. Anybody can make a plan on a napkin and feel excited about the future for an evening. But who's going to wake up tomorrow morning and start executing that plan? Who's going to keep going next week when the excitement wears off? Who's going to keep at it next month when the obstacles show up? Who's going to keep at it next year when everybody else has moved on to the next shiny idea? The person with character, that's who. The person who made a decision and refuses to renegotiate that decision every time it gets hard. I'm telling you, here's what happens to talent when it has no structure underneath it. It becomes a source of frustration instead of a source of fulfillment. The gifted person who never develops discipline doesn't just hit a wall, they suffer. They suffer because they can see the gap between where they are and where they know they should be. They suffer because other people keep reminding them of their potential, which only makes the gap more painful. You're so talented, people say. You could do anything you want. And every time they hear it, it stings a little more because they know the truth. They know that having the ability to do something and actually doing it are two completely different things. Potential is not an achievement. Potential is a promissory note. And if you never cash it in, it becomes the heaviest burden you'll ever carry. So what's the lesson in all of this? The lesson is simple but not easy. Stop relying on your talent to save you. Stop waiting for your gifts to carry you where you want to go. Your talent will get you noticed, but it won't get you there. Your character will get you there. Your discipline will get you there. Your willingness to do what's required, even when it's boring, even when it's hard, even when nobody's watching, that's what will get you there. Start building the inner architecture. Start putting together the framework of habits and disciplines and values that will hold your talent up instead of letting it collapse under its own weight. Because talent without character is a beautiful building with no foundation. And I don't care how beautiful the building is. If the foundation isn't there, it's only a matter of time before the whole thing comes down. So here's what I want you to ask yourself today. Are you living off your talent, or are you building with your character? Because if you're living off your talent, you're spending capital that will eventually run out. Talent is like a savings account with no new deposits. You can draw from it for a while, but eventually the balance hits zero. Character, on the other hand, is a daily investment. It grows with every disciplined choice, every kept promise, every moment of integrity. It compounds over time like interest, quietly building in the background until one day you look up and realize you've built something no amount of raw talent could have built on its own. The question is not whether you were born gifted. Plenty of people are born gifted. The question is whether you're willing to do the work that talent alone will never do. That is the question that separates those who almost made it from those who actually did. Let me paint a picture for you that I think will change how you approach your entire life if you let it. Most people wake up every morning and go chasing. They chase money. They chase opportunities. They chase clients. They chase promotions. They chase deals. They spend their whole lives running after things, reaching for things, grabbing at things, and they can't figure out why those things always seem to stay just out of reach. It's exhausting, isn't it? This constant pursuit, this endless hustle of trying to track down the next opportunity before somebody else gets to it first. And I'm not here to tell you that hard work doesn't matter, because it does. Effort matters. Showing up matters. But here's what I want you to think about. What if the problem isn't that you're not chasing hard enough? What if the problem is that you're chasing at all? You see, there's a principle at work in life that most people never discover, and it's this. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Let that sit for a second. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. Wanting something has very little to do with whether it actually shows up in your life. Everybody wants more. Everybody wants better. Wanting is the cheapest activity in the world because it requires nothing of you. But becoming, now that's a different story entirely. When you become the kind of person that opportunity is looking for, you don't have to chase it anymore. It starts looking for you. That's not magic. That's not wishful thinking. And that's not some fairy tale to make you feel good. That is a law, just as real as gravity. And it works whether you believe in it or not. Now, I want you to think about integrity for a moment. Not as a word you put on a motivational poster, but as a practice, as a way of living. Integrity means you do what you said you were going to do. It means your word and your action are the same thing. It means that when you shake someone's hand and make an agreement, that agreement is settled. Not because of a contract, not because of a lawyer, but because of who you are. Now, when you live that way consistently, what do you think happens? People start talking about you. Not because you ask them to, not because you ran some advertising campaign about how trustworthy you are, but because your behavior has spoken for you in a way that no ad ever could. And when people start talking about your integrity, other people start listening, and those people start seeking you out. They want to do business with you. They want to partner with you. They want to be around you. That is the magnetic quality of character at work. And you didn't have to chase a single one of them. Now let me add another layer to this. Consistency. Consistency is one of the most underrated qualities a person can develop, and it is one of the most magnetic. You know why? Because most people are inconsistent. Most people are fired up one day and checked out the next. Most people are excited on Monday and done by Wednesday. Most people make promises in January that they've already broken by February. So, when someone shows up who is consistent, not perfect, not flawless, but consistent, it stands out like a lighthouse in a storm. People are drawn to consistency because consistency is rare, and rare things are valuable. When you are the same person on Friday that you were on Monday, when you deliver the same quality of work in December that you delivered in March, when your mood and your ethics and your effort level don't swing with the weather, you become someone that people can build around. And when people realize they can build around you, they start bringing their best opportunities to your door. And then there's reliability, which is the quiet cousin of consistency. Reliability doesn't make a lot of noise. It doesn't show up with fireworks and fanfare. Reliability just shows up. That's its entire resume. It shows up. It shows up on time. It shows up prepared. It shows up when it's raining and when it's cold and when nobody else bothered to come. And over time, that simple act of showing up becomes the most powerful statement you can make about who you are. Because in a world where everybody's making promises and half the people aren't keeping them, the person who simply does what they said they'd do becomes extraordinary by default. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be the most creative. You don't have to be the loudest or the flashiest. You just have to be there when you said you'd be there, doing what you said you'd do. That alone will set you apart from the majority of people you'll ever go up against. Now here's where this gets really exciting. When you combine integrity, consistency, and reliability into a single life, when those three qualities become the foundation of who you are and how you operate, you create what I call a gravitational pull. Just like the planets are held in orbit by gravity, the right people, the right deals, and the right circumstances are pulled toward a person of character by a force that is just as real and just as predictable. It's not random. It's not luck. It's not being in the right place at the right time. It's being the right person and letting the place and the time take care of themselves. The right people don't show up in your life by accident. They show up because something about who you are connected with something about who they are. And the wrong people? They tend to drift away on their own because your character creates an environment that doesn't work for them. That's the beauty of it. You don't just attract the right things. You naturally push away the wrong ones. Tell me, have you ever met someone who seemed to attract good things without even trying? It seemed like every time you turned around, they had a new opportunity, a new connection, a new door opening. And maybe you thought, well, they're just lucky. Maybe you thought, well, they know the right people. Maybe you even thought, well, it's easy for them. But let me challenge that, because I believe if you looked more closely at that person's life, you would find something very different from luck. You would find someone who spent years developing themselves. You would find someone who read the books, went to the seminars, practiced the disciplines, guarded their integrity, kept their promises, and invested in their own growth when nobody was paying them to do it. The luck you're seeing is the harvest of seeds that were planted long before you started watching. You're seeing the result, but you didn't see the work. And the work is where the magnetism comes from. This brings me to something that I believe is one of the most important ideas a person can ever take hold of. And it is this: work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Now that might sound strange at first. Most people spend the bulk of their energy working on their jobs, working on their businesses, working on their careers. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. You should work hard at what you do. But if that's where all your energy goes, you're making a big mistake. Because your income, your opportunities, your relationships, and your quality of life are not determined mainly by what you do at work. They're determined mainly by what you become as a person. Your job pays you for your time and your skill, but your personal development pays you for the rest of your life. When you grow as a person, everything around you grows. Your conversations get better. Your decisions get sharper. Your relationships get deeper. Your ability to see and grab hold of opportunity gets stronger. Everything changes, not because the world changed, but because you did. Think about it this way. If you spend all your time working on your job, you'll make a living. But if you spend time working on yourself, you'll make a fortune. And I don't just mean money, although that's part of it. I mean a fortune of rich relationships, a fortune of wisdom, a fortune of confidence, a fortune of inner peace that doesn't depend on whether the economy is up or down, or whether your boss is in a good mood or a bad one. When you invest in yourself, in your mind, in your character, in your discipline, in your ability to communicate and connect and lead, you become the kind of person that the world wants to invest in. And when the world starts investing in you, opportunities show up that you never could have created on your own. Here's what most people miss. They think the path to a better life runs through better circumstances. If I could just get the better job, the better location, the better break, then my life would improve. But that's backwards. The path to a better life runs through a better you. The circumstances don't shape the person shapes the circumstances. Put a person of character in a difficult environment and watch what happens. They don't complain about the environment. They get to work changing it. They bring their integrity into it. They bring their consistency into it. They bring their reliability into it. And before long, the environment starts to shift. Not because the environment decided to cooperate, but because the person inside it refused to be defined by it. That is the attraction principle in action. You become the magnet, and the world rearranges itself around you. So let's bring this back to where we started. Stop chasing. I know that's hard to hear for some of you because chasing feels productive. It feels like you're doing something. But chasing is exhausting, and it puts the power in the hands of whatever you're chasing instead of keeping the power where it belongs, inside of you. Instead of chasing opportunities, become the kind of person opportunities can't ignore. Instead of chasing the right people, become the kind of person the right people are looking for. Instead of chasing success, become successful in your habits, in your thinking, in your character, and let the external results catch up to the internal reality. That is how this works. It has always worked this way. The people who figured it out didn't just change their strategies, they changed themselves. And when they changed themselves, everything else followed. Not overnight, not without effort, not without patience, but inevitably. Because when you build the magnet, what's meant to be attracted to you will find its way. You don't have to go looking for it. You just have to become ready to receive it. Let me talk to you about something that nobody likes to discuss, but everybody needs to hear. Pressure, adversity. The moments in life when everything that could go wrong decides to go wrong all at once. Like the universe held a meeting and agreed to test you on the same day. We've all had those moments. We've all had that Thursday night when the phone rings with bad news, when the deal falls apart, when the person you counted on lets you down, when the money runs out before the month does. And in those moments, something very interesting happens, something that reveals more about you than any success ever could. Because anybody can have character on a sunny Tuesday when the bills are paid, the family is happy, and the future looks bright. That's easy. That doesn't prove anything. The real measure of who you are shows up when the sky goes dark and the ground starts shaking beneath your feet. Now here's the part that most people get wrong. Most people believe that pressure builds character. You hear that all the time, right? Tough times build character. It sounds nice and there's a tiny bit of truth in it, but it's mostly wrong. Pressure does not build character. Pressure reveals character. There's a big difference between those two ideas, and if you miss it, you'll spend your whole life misunderstanding why you respond to crisis the way you do. When the hard times come, and they will come, make no mistake about that, what comes out of you is not something that was created in that moment. What comes out of you is something that was already in there. The crisis just squeezed it to the surface. It's like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Whatever's inside the tube is what comes out. You don't squeeze a tube and get something that wasn't already in there. If there's patience inside you, pressure will bring patience out. If there's anger inside you, pressure will bring anger out. If there's integrity inside you, it will show up when you need it most. And if it's not inside you, no amount of wishing will make it appear in the moment you need it. This is why crisis doesn't create who you are, it exposes who you've been becoming. And that word becoming is the key to the whole thing. Who you've been becoming in the quiet, ordinary, unremarkable days of your life is exactly who you will be in the loud, chaotic, overwhelming days. There's no switch you can flip. There's no reserve tank of character you can tap into when things get hard. What you have is what you've been building, and what you haven't been building simply won't be there. I've watched people go through incredible hardship, and some of them come through it with grace and strength and composure that takes your breath away. And I've watched other people go through the same kind of hardship, and they fall apart completely. Same circumstances, completely different responses. And the difference is never about the circumstances. The difference is always about what was inside the person before the circumstances showed up. Imagine two houses sitting side by side and a terrible storm rolls in. Same wind, same rain, same lightning, same everything. The storm doesn't pick favorites. It hits both houses with equal force. When the storm passes, one house is still standing, solid and intact. The other one is in pieces, scattered across the yard. Now, did the storm build the strong house? Of course not. The strong house was built long before the storm ever showed up. The foundation was poured on a calm day. The walls were raised on an ordinary afternoon. The roof was secured when the sun was shining, and nobody was thinking about storms. The storm didn't make that house strong. The storm proved that the house was strong. And the house that fell apart, the storm didn't make it weak. The storm proved that it was weak, that corners had been cut, that the foundation was shallow, that the materials were cheap. The storm just revealed what was already true about both structures. Your life works the same way. The storms of life, the financial setbacks, the health scares, the broken relationships, the betrayals, the losses, they are not building your character. They are revealing the character you've already built or failed to build. And that is either a terrifying thought or a freeing one, depending on how you've been spending your ordinary days. If you've been investing in your character during the calm seasons, if you've been developing discipline and patience and resilience when nobody was requiring it of you, then the storm is simply your chance to show what you're made of. But if you've been coasting, if you've been cutting corners, if you've been telling yourself that you'll get serious about personal growth someday, then the storm is going to expose every crack you've been pretending wasn't there. Now let's talk about what this means in real, everyday terms. The habits you set in private become the strength you display in public. Let me say that again because it might be the most important sentence in this entire talk. The habits you set in private become the strength you display in public. What you do when nobody is watching is the rehearsal for what you'll do when everybody is watching. If you practice discipline in the small things, getting up on time, keeping your word on the little promises, managing your money carefully when there's not much of it, controlling your temper when the stakes are low, then when the big moment comes, when the spotlight is on and the pressure is crushing, you will have something to draw from. You'll have a reservoir of strength that was filled drop by drop, day by day, in the privacy of your own life. But if your private life is a mess, if you cut corners when nobody's looking, if you break small promises because you think they don't matter, if you let your discipline slide every time it gets uncomfortable, then you are building a reservoir of weakness. And when the pressure comes, that's what will pour out. Not because you're a bad person, not because you don't want to be strong, but because you haven't practiced being strong. Strength is not something you summon on command. It's something you develop through repetition. The same way a musician develops the ability to play a difficult piece. The musician doesn't walk on stage and suddenly pick up the skill to play the concerto. The musician spent months in a practice room, playing the same passages over and over until they became second nature. And when they walk on stage and the lights are bright and the audience is watching, their fingers know what to do because they've done it 1,000 times before in private. That is how character works under pressure. Your public performance is always a reflection of your private practice. I want to challenge a belief that many people carry around without even realizing it. The belief goes something like this: when the big moment comes, I'll rise to the occasion. People love to tell themselves that. They believe that somehow, when life demands greatness from them, they'll find it within themselves, even if they haven't been building it. And I get why that belief is attractive. It lets you off the hook for today. It says you don't need to do the hard work of preparation because some future version of yourself will magically show up and handle everything. But that's a fantasy, and it's a dangerous one. You do not rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. Whatever you have practiced, whatever you have repeated, whatever you have made habitual, that is the level you will perform at when the heat is on. Not higher, not lower, right there. So the question becomes, what are you practicing? Not what are you planning to practice, not what do you intend to practice someday when life settles down and you have more time. What are you practicing right now, today, in the ordinary moments of your life? Are you practicing patience or are you practicing impatience? Are you practicing gratitude or are you practicing complaint? Are you practicing self-control or are you practicing indulgence? Are you practicing honesty in the small conversations or are you practicing small deceptions that you tell yourself don't really count? Every single day, you are practicing something. Every single day, you are filling your reservoir with something. And whatever you're putting in there is exactly what's going to come pouring out when life squeezes you. Let me tell you something about the people who handle adversity well, the ones who go through the fire and come out on the other side not just intact, but somehow better. Those people didn't get lucky. They didn't have some special gene for toughness that the rest of us don't have. What they had was a foundation that was poured long before the crisis ever showed up. They had years of small, invisible disciplines that nobody ever applauded, nobody ever rewarded, and nobody ever even noticed. They had the habit of doing what was right when it was easier to do what was convenient. They had the habit of keeping their composure when it would have been more satisfying to lose it. They had the habit of telling the truth when a lie would have been quicker and cleaner. And when the storm came, all of those habits rose to the surface and carried them through. Not because the storm made them strong, but because they had been getting strong all along in the quiet, private, unremarkable moments that nobody writes books about. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting for the storm to find out who you are. Start building now. Start today. Start with the small things. The way you manage your morning. The way you speak to the people in your household. The way you handle a minor frustration. The way you respond when someone cuts you off in traffic. Those moments feel insignificant, and that's exactly why they matter. Because the character you build in insignificant moments is the character you'll have access to in the moments that matter most. Pour the foundation while the sun is shining. Raise the walls while the sky is clear. Because the storm doesn't send a warning letter. It doesn't schedule an appointment. It just shows up. And when it does, the only thing that matters is what you built before it arrived. I want to talk to you now about something that too many people leave to chance, and that is the construction of their own character. Most people treat their character like it's something they were born with, something they inherited, something that was handed to them like eye color or height, fixed, permanent, and beyond their control. And that is one of the most expensive misunderstandings a person can carry through life. Because character is not inherited. You did not receive your character in some cosmic package at birth. Character is constructed, deliberately and intentionally, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And the moment you understand that, the moment you truly accept that you are the architect of your own character, everything changes. Because now you're no longer a victim of who you happen to be. Now you're a craftsman shaping who you're choosing to become. Think about what a sculptor does when they stand in front of a raw block of marble. They don't look at that block and say, well, I guess whatever's in there is what I'm stuck with. No, they study the marble. They picture what it could become. And then they pick up the chisel and they go to work. They chip away what doesn't belong. They refine what does. They make 1,000 small decisions. This stays, that goes. This needs more definition. That needs to be smoothed out. And none of those decisions are made carelessly, because the sculptor understands something that most people never grasp about their own lives. Every single stroke of the chisel matters. Every cut changes the shape of the final work. There are no neutral strokes. There are no insignificant decisions. Every chip either moves the piece closer to the masterpiece or further away from it. Your life is that block of marble, and you are holding the chisel right now, whether you realize it or not. Now here's what makes this both exciting and sobering at the same time. You choose what stays. Let me say that plainly so there's no confusion. You choose what stays in your character. The qualities that define you, your honesty, your patience, your discipline, your generosity, your courage, those are not accidents. They are choices that you made and then repeated until they became part of who you are. Nobody forced you to be honest. You chose honesty, and then you chose it again and again and again until honesty became something people could expect from you without even thinking about it. That's how character is built, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the repetition of 1,000 undramatic ones. You chose what stays, and by choosing it over and over, you cemented it into the foundation of who you are. But here's the other side of that coin, and it's just as important. You also choose what gets chipped away. There are things in every person's character that don't belong in the finished work. Habits that are holding you back. Patterns of thinking that are keeping you small. Tendencies that you've put up with for so long that you've started to believe they're permanent parts of who you are. But they're not permanent. They're just stone that hasn't been chiseled yet. The impatience you struggle with that can be chipped away. The tendency to cut corners that can be chipped away. The habit of making excuses instead of making progress that can be chipped away. But it won't chip itself. Stone doesn't remove itself from the sculpture. You have to pick up the chisel and do the deliberate, sometimes painful work of removing what doesn't serve the person you're trying to become. And I want to be straight with you about something. This work is not comfortable. chiseling away parts of yourself that you've carried around for years, maybe decades, is not a pleasant afternoon activity. It requires you to look at yourself honestly, which most people would rather not do. It requires you to admit that some of the things you've been defending about yourself, that's just who I am. That's just how I was raised. I've always been this way, are not badges of identity, but blocks of stone that need to come off. And that admission takes courage, real courage, because it means accepting that you are not yet the finished product. It means accepting that there is work left to do. But I'm telling you, the willingness to accept that you are unfinished is not a weakness. It is the very definition of strength. The person who believes they have nothing left to improve is the person who has stopped growing. And a person who has stopped growing has started dying. Whether they know it or not, the construction of character happens in the ordinary hours of an ordinary day. It happens when you wake up in the morning and you have a choice. Do I keep the commitment I made to myself? Or do I hit the snooze button and talk myself out of it? That's a brick. That single choice is a brick in the structure of your character. It happens when someone wrongs you and you have a choice. Do I respond with dignity or do I respond with pettiness? That's a brick. It happens when you're handling money and you have a choice. Do I manage this wisely or do I spend it carelessly because it feels good in the moment? That's a brick. None of these moments feel historic when they're happening. None of them feel like they're shaping the course of your life, but they are. Every single one of them is adding to or subtracting from the structure you're building. And the structure you're building is the one you're going to live in for the rest of your life. Now, I want to address something that I think holds a lot of people back from this kind of deliberate self-construction, and it's the belief that character should come naturally. There's a popular idea out there that says, if you have to work at being a good person, then you're not really a good person. As if goodness should just flow out of you without any effort, like water from a spring. And I think that idea has done a lot of damage. Because the truth is, character always requires effort. It always requires intention. It always requires choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. And that choice never becomes completely effortless no matter how long you've been making it. The person who has been honest for 40 years still faces moments where a lie would be more convenient. The person who has been disciplined for decades still faces mornings where the bed is warm and the alarm is unwelcome. The difference is not that the struggle goes away. The difference is that the commitment gets deeper. The sculptor who has been carving for 30 years still has to pick up the chisel every day. The work doesn't do itself. Mastery doesn't mean the work becomes unnecessary. It means the work becomes more refined. Here's something else I want you to think about. The finished work of your character is not for the museum. It's not a trophy to be displayed behind glass where people can admire it from a distance. The character you build is for your life. It's for the Tuesday morning conversation with your spouse. It's for the Friday afternoon decision at the office. It's for the Saturday when your child asks you a question that deserves an honest answer you'd rather not give. Your character is a working instrument, not a decorative piece. It has to function under the real conditions of a real life, which means it has to be built with real materials, not with good intentions, not with nice ideas, but with actual choices made under actual circumstances. The sculptor doesn't build the statue with thoughts about marble. The sculptor builds it with hands on the stone, and you don't build your character with thoughts about virtue. You build it with hands on the moments of your daily life. Legacy is where the construction of character reaches far beyond your own life. The character you build is not just for you. It's for your family. It's for the people who are watching you right now and learning from what you do, whether you've given them permission to or not. Your children are watching how you handle disappointment. They're watching how you treat people who can do nothing for you. They're watching whether your private behavior matches your public words. And they are constructing their own character, at least in part, based on the blueprint they see in yours. What you build in yourself becomes the model for what they build in themselves. That is a weight and a privilege that should make every one of us take this work more seriously than we ever have before. You are not just building for yourself. You are building for the people who come after you, the people who will carry your name and your example into rooms you'll never enter and into years you'll never see. So here we are at the fundamental question, and it's a question that deserves more than a quick answer. It deserves your attention for the rest of your days. The question is not whether you have the raw material. You do. Every person sitting in this room has the raw material to build a character worth admiring. You have the marble. It's right in front of you, and it's been there your whole life. The question is whether you'll pick up the chisel. The question is whether you'll do the slow, deliberate, sometimes uncomfortable work of shaping yourself into the person you know you're capable of becoming. Not the person the world says you should be, not the person your circumstances have tried to make you, but the person you would be if you took full responsibility for your own construction and refused to leave it to chance, to habit, or to the influence of whoever happens to be standing nearby. Pick up the chisel. Start today. Start with one choice, one brick, one stroke against the stone, and then do it again tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because the masterpiece is not built in a day, but it is built one day at a time. And years from now, when you look back at the body of work that is your life, not your career, not your bank account, not your possessions, but your life, the sum total of who you became and what you stood for, you will be grateful that you didn't leave it to chance. You will be grateful that you treated your character with the same seriousness and care that the finest sculptor treats the finest marble. And the people who love you, the people who depend on you, the people who will carry your legacy forward after you're gone, they will be grateful too. Because the greatest gift you can give to the people in your life is not your money, not your time, not even your love, as important as those things are. The greatest gift you can give them is a character worth following. Build it with everything you've got, and it will outlast everything else you'll ever build.
I begin each day with discipline, clear purpose, integrity, and gratitude. I focus only on what I can influence, and I take deliberate action daily. I reflect, journal, and learn from each day so I improve tomorrow. I learn and teach every day, sharpening my judgment and understanding. I show up intentionally as a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. I take responsibility for the impact of my decisions on others. I train my body daily with discipline and respect for long-term health. I I am becoming a capable managing director who understands business. I am building long-term financial stability through competence and integrity. I act with gratitude, humility, and a commitment to give back. I am becoming someone who does high-intensity interval training every single week. I take time to recognize what I am grateful for every day. I visualize success every day so I know what I'm moving towards. I begin each day with discipline, clear purpose, integrity, and gratitude. I focus only on what I can influence, and I take deliberate action daily. I reflect, journal, and learn from each day so I improve tomorrow. I learn and teach every day, sharpening my judgment and understanding. I show up intentionally as a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. I take responsibility for the impact of my decisions on others. I train my body daily with discipline and respect for long-term health. I am becoming a capable managing director who understands business. I am building long-term financial stability through competence and integrity. I act with gratitude, humility, and a commitment to give back. I am becoming someone who does high-intensity interval training every single week. I take time to recognize what I am grateful for every day. I visualize success every day so I know what I'm moving towards. I begin each day with discipline, clear purpose, integrity, and gratitude. I focus only on what I can influence, and I take deliberate action daily. I reflect, journal, and learn from each day so I improve tomorrow. I learn and teach every day, sharpening my judgment and understanding. I show up intentionally as a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. I take responsibility for the impact of my decisions on others. I train my body daily with discipline and respect for long-term health. becoming a capable managing director who understands business. I am building long-term financial stability through competence and integrity. I act with gratitude, humility, and a commitment to give back. I am becoming someone who does high-intensity interval training every single week. I take time to recognize what I am grateful for every day. I visualize success every day so I know what I'm moving towards. I begin each day with discipline, clear purpose, integrity, and gratitude. I focus only on what I can influence, and I take deliberate action daily. I reflect, journal, and learn from each day so I improve tomorrow. I learn and teach every day, sharpening my judgment and understanding. I show up intentionally as a husband, a father, a son, and a brother. I take responsibility for the impact of my decisions on others. I train my body daily with discipline and respect for long-term health. I am becoming a capable managing director who understands business. I am building long-term financial stability through competence and integrity. I act with gratitude, humility, and a commitment to give back. I am becoming someone who does high-intensity interval training every single week. I take time to recognize what I am grateful for every day. I visualize success every day so I know what I'm moving towards. I begin each day with discipline, clear purpose, integrity, and gratitude. I focus only on what I can influence, and I take deliberate action daily. I reflect, journal, and learn from each day so I improve tomorrow. Day 129. Cool. 9.6 effort. Could have tried harder.